We're live. Good evening, everyone. It is 5:02 on Monday, November 24th, 2025 at, I was going to say 5:02 again. That's what it is. And I will call to order this special meeting of the Millwood City Council. Mackenzie, could you do a roll call for us, please?
Sure. Councilmember BC. Here. Councilmember Culler.
Here.
Councilmember Van Hees.
Here.
Beautiful. Councilmember Sanders. Not here. Councilmember Stravens.
Present. Let the record reflect that we have a quorum of 4 members this evening. Councilmember Van Hees is attending remotely. Councilmember Sanders is not present at this time. If he does arrive prior to action items, we will note his arrival for the record. Quick pledge of allegiance this evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Item number 3 are our public comments concerning action items. Have we received any public comments? So we have no public comments on the action items this evening. That brings us to item number 4. We're doing this a little out of order this evening. These are action items presented for your consideration. First is a consent agenda, which consists of approval of quotes for, you see there, Specialty Door, McVeigh Brothers for some, McVeigh Brothers and Intermountain Sign and Safety for a new radar speed sign. These are weatherization issues, things like that for the city shop. We need to replace one of the doors, the man door downstairs that goes into the old fire garage. And then this is the replacement of the speed sign on the pole mounted speed sign that was taken out by the tow truck. Does anyone wish to take any of these items separately from the consent agenda? Not hearing or seeing any, do I have a motion on tonight's consent agenda as presented?
I'll move approval of consent agenda as presented.
I'll second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, tonight's consent agenda is approved. Thank you very much. And so that brings us to some of our more simpler items. First is Resolution 2025-13, the 2026 reauthorization of the employees' VEBA plan. This was discussed at the last regular meeting. Are there any questions on this, on the VEBA or this resolution from any council members? Do I have a motion on Resolution 2025-13?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2025-13.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, Resolution 2025-13 is approved unanimously. Thank you. Next is Ordinance 554, amending Millwood Municipal Code 50210 for our business licenses and regulations. This was introduced at the last regular meeting, which brings us, is it just generally brings us into requirements with the state?
Yes, it was clearly, Jay was only just increasing that 2,000 threshold to 4,000 per their request, or request.
Any questions for Ms. Castles on this? Do I have a motion on Ordinance 554 as presented? We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, Ordinance 554 is presented unanimously. That also brings us to ordinance 556, amending NOAA Municipal Code 1516-040, dangerous or unfit dwellings. This is simply adding the
Lighting under section F.
and lighting under section F. Lighting under section F, and I think there was
Oh, the non-compliance.
no.
I see.
Yes.
Probably in there, right?
Yes, this is the lighting, and then this adds the IFC, the International Fire Code, to our dangerous or unfit dwellings, as it was, and makes it not the 2021, but the IFC is current. And we removed any reference or consideration of NOAA Municipal Code Section 17 from this ordinance, so it is only the dangerous or unfit dwellings. Any questions? Seeing or hearing no questions, do I have a motion on ordinance 556 as presented?
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 556 as presented.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, ordinance 556 is approved unanimously. Thank you. And that brings us to the item E, which is the interlocal agreement with Spokane County for Aquifer Protection Fund area, the APA funds allocation and use. And so basically this is the all-encompassing ILA between any of the entities that are participating in the APA, how the funds are distributed, and how they are allocated and how they are used. Do we have any questions or discussions? Yes.
And this is the one that our citizens voted to affirm. They have asked for this.
Yes. The APA reauthorization and fee increase was approved by the majority of voters in Millwood. So this is something that we were looking at doing. As I think Mr. Wurst indicated last time at the meeting, we don't have a lot of wiggle room on these sorts of things. So it seems to be all in good order. Any other questions? Hearing no other questions, do I have a motion on this, on acceptance and authorization for me to assign the interlocal agreement on behalf of the City of Millwood?
I'll make a motion to approve the authorization from the mayor for the interlocal agreement between Spokane County and City of Millwood.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the ILA with Spokane County for the APA fund allocation and use will be is accepted and will be executed by my signature or by the mayor's signature. So thank you very much for that. So that concludes our action items for council consideration. Now we have our action items that are presented for first reading or continued discussion. First up tonight is a public hearing of ordinance 555, the 2026 city budget. This is the second public hearing for the city budget. So I will ask Mr. Armstrong to lead us through.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If we'll put that up on the screen. This is the 2026 budget hearing number 2. We had our first hearing on November 12th. We'll pop to the next slide. That'd be great. There we go. Well, actually, we'll back up. We had our rate meeting. Go ahead. This slide's fine. This slide's good. Okay. We had our levy rate calculation hearings earlier. October 14th was the first one. November 12th was the second one. That is built into the budget for property taxes. We submitted the levy rate calculation to the county as required prior to November 30th. We actually submitted it on November 20th. So we had our first budget hearing on November 12th. This is the second budget hearing, which needs to be completed prior to December 1st. So today, tomorrow, or Wednesday were the days that we had left to get that in. So we're fulfilling the legal requirement for the budget. I could present hundreds of thousands of numbers, but I only am presenting thousands of numbers today. If you want to hit the next slide. I like to go back a few years, and a lot of this is in a different format in your packet that you've had since last week, just to give some reference over time as to what things actually look like. So I provided 24's budget to actual. You can see there's variances always between budgets and actuals. 25 budget to 25's year-end estimate, which I started this process in October, so it was pretty much based on September's numbers to get the December estimate. And then 2026 budget. Revenues are shown on this slide, number 3 in the, oh, did I print one? I didn't print one. I should print one for you before you leave. But it shows the sources of revenue. So the total revenues in 25 are estimated at about 4.5 million, whereas in 26 it's 7.3, and you can see up there the intergovernmental line has to do with grants. As we move through this, I am going to eventually compare the preliminary budget that I presented 2 weeks ago or 10 days ago to this and the difference. The majority of it is in that intergovernmental line. So, next slide, we have expenditures and appropriations. The city of Millwood adopts their budget at the fund level on appropriations. So this is an important slide, is that when we get through this, you're actually adopting appropriations in your budget at the fund level. This is not at the fund level, this is at the total level by categories, general government revenues, public safety, these are expenditures, sorry. The general government, which is the finance department, the council, the mayor's office, that's the general. Public safety is law enforcement, court fees, code enforcement, natural and economic services, mostly Millwood Park maintenance. Social services is, I think, a drug rehabilitation program. Culture and recreation, I guess, is the park. Okay, number 2, natural and economic services are animal control, planning department. Okay, then we get into culture and recreation. The majority of it is the park. Number 4, transportation is streets, sidewalks, trail, snow and ice, leaf pickup, which I hear concluded today. And then street cleaning. 5, utilities, obviously water and sewer. And then capital expenditures, which I have a list of capital expenditures coming. Total appropriations for the upcoming year are $5.5 million, $5,558,000. There's a difference in the 25 budget to the year-end estimate, mostly based on the Argonne Road project, and then various line items, and the line items were in the packet. That's the hundreds of thousands of lines and numbers if you wanted to look at those by line. Some are above at budgeted and some of them are below. At the fund level, I will show you soon, we are below, estimated to be year-end below appropriation level. I am in process of a research project as to what to do if you're under appropriations. I know what to do when you're over. I'm going to research if there's a requirement to redo your 2025 budget if you're under appropriations. I'm not convinced yet. So, next slide goes from fund. I'll give you an 8-year run on your cash balances, your fund balances, revenues and expenses, so you can see a trend. Again, you look at 2026's revenues are somewhat high. Since you're a cash basis reporting entity, the reimbursements from WashDOT are dragging and will flop into 2026. So the budgeted revenues for 25 are gonna be down, which rolls 2026's revenues up. But it gives you an idea of where your total revenues are annually. So you got an 8-year average of 3.4, and you have expenditures average of 3.4. So your cash balances are maintaining a fairly steady level. Okay, next slide. So the 2026 preliminary budget, which I presented on November 12th, is up there, leaving a revised cash balance of 3.6 million. If we go to the next one, which I think is, it now shows, what do we got here? I can't even add all those up. This is the last slide. But anyway, it basically came out $167,000 more in an ending cash balance. The biggest change is obviously in fund number 1, which is where those grant revenues and expenditures are coming and going. So there was a large change. So the estimated beginning balance of 26 obviously comes from the ending balance of 25. So that was the biggest change. But then your revenues go up in 26. And so that slide, which I will get all of these slides for you, it was on my agenda to get that done, but time ran out. So, but in effect, this final ordinance number is $160,000 better cash-wise than it was 2 weeks ago. If you continue to shove those numbers around like oil on a table, they will continue to move. So I'm going to stop shoving them around. Next slide, Kenzie. So the ordinance in the council packet is at the fund level, estimated expenditures of $5.558001, $5.6 million of expenditures, and $7.3 million in revenue, with your estimated ending balance of 3.8, which the 25 cash balance is down, and I can tell you it's about 1.2 down because that's what I'm hanging right now on WashDOT reimbursement. So at the fund level, that's the budget ordinance that you'll be adopting whenever you do that, and I'll discuss that in a second. So that is what's in the packet, those numbers there, and I'm done estimating, I'm done with that, and that's what we're going to write on for 2026, as long as the council approves it. Okay, next slide, Kinsey. Capital projects are listed there, and the biggest change again, the continuing Argonne projects, revised that, which actually will pull back in $993,000 back into the general fund. But those capital projects, estimated costs on the left match the appropriations on the earlier schedule, $2.5 million. Next slide, Kenzie. So just in review, we had our public hearing. We had our levy rate calculations in October and early November. We had our first public hearing on this budget November 12th. We ran through revenues and expenditures. And again, in the packet, because I think in the past it has been presented on the screen line by line, I chose to provide that in paper. And I can actually forward anything that you'd like to review over the next week or so. The real estate excise taxes, there are no expenditures out of those funds. And we looked at the utilities fund, the capital projects. The requirement is to have your second public hearing on the year 2022-6 budget prior to December 1st. So the 2026 budget prior to December 1st, which we are fulfilled our obligation there. The budget itself must be adopted by the council prior to December 31st. So you can choose to adopt it tonight, or you can choose, as far as I know, you can choose to adopt it in the December meeting, which is prior to December 31st. The time that it is adopted, we will forward it to State Auditor's Office and to MRSC as they will publish these also. And I think that concludes my presentation, and I will print this slide deck out for you before you leave.
Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Armstrong? That's pretty thorough, thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. So it is 5:22, and I will open the public hearing on the 2026 budget for the city of Millwood. Do we have anybody who signed up to provide any sort of testimony?
Tina, do we have anybody?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, no.
So, second call for public comment. Third and final call for public comment. Seeing nobody come forward, I will close the public comment at, we're gonna call it 7:23, or 5:23, because I hate to call it just the same thing over again. So 5:23, and so at this time, that concludes our public hearing, our second public hearing. That concludes our requirement for public hearings on the budget for 2026. And the budget will be provided for council consideration at the December 9th meeting at that time. So thank you all very much. Next is the update, or what I would say is the first reading of the Irvin Water District Number 6 interlocal agreement for wholesale of municipal water. So before you tonight, you have two documents. Both of them are the same. One is the red line strikeout version of the agreement that based on, and then the other is a clean copy, says draft. The changes in here are reflecting of last comments from council, which is the city shall serve the citizens and businesses as opposed to may. The remainder of the comments are those comments that were generated by further discussions between Welch Comer and Urban Water District's engineers. Basically, in section 3, it has been determined that the city will, as part of this agreement, would request a one-time capital improvement payment from Irvin of $35,000. That is in respect to the Butler well and any pulling the pump, pulling the motor, doing the inspections on that, variable frequency drive, and any sort of repairs or replacements of those pump elements. That was determined to be a 50-50 split. We have certain things that we have to do to Butler that we came about as part of our own inspections. That would have included also pulling the Butler well and looking at that. And during the mayor comments, I'll refer to a few things with relation to the metering agreement that was presented at the last council meeting, the ecology metering order that also would drive a few changes in our water system based on that. Next is
Mayor, quick question.
Yeah.
So that 3.4, was that 13.5? The last one? Isn't there a payment of 13.5?
yes,
Okay.
that has now been up to 35,000.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. And now the next set of changes really comes into Exhibit A, where we define a consumptive rate of 38 cents. Then we define a capital contribution charge of 10 cents per 100 cubic feet. Both of those are 100 cubic feet. We have, through discussions with the engineers with Welch Comer, determined that beyond supply, when or if we were to supply Irvin beyond 800 acre feet of water a year, there needs to be an additional discussion of that capital improvement fee. At that point, the burden on the system, our burden, shifts significantly, or shifts, can't say significantly, but it definitely the burden on the system is driven more by us wholesaling water to Millwood than it would be supplying our customers. And so at that point, there would need to be a discussion. If they got beyond 800 acre feet, there would need to be a discussion as to their level of requirement for capital improvement contribution to our overall system. What we did say in there is that you'll note that there is basically the same thing that says over 800 feet for 800 acre feet for 2 consecutive years. Should it just bump over once for some reason, that would not trigger this. But if it does look like they are literally on the upward glide path for 2 consecutive years, then yes, it would trigger that ability that says, hey, we need to go back to the table and figure out what's going on.
Does it give any parameters of what that something looks like? Cause I kind of feel like if it triggers it over 2 years, we don't really have any kind of bargaining power anymore. It's just like, oh, it says here we'll revisit the discussion.
Well, the discussion then becomes what is the actual calculated.
Are you allowed to reel back on somebody though, once you've allowed them, do you know what I'm saying? Like if you allow them to cross the threshold for 2 years, are you allowed to say like, well, we always acknowledged that there was gonna be an increased burden once we crossed this threshold. Now we're wanting to revisit it, and if they say, oh, well, we just like it as is, let's keep it as is there any, say, a mechanism for us to even pull it back to 800 square acres or whatever the unit is?
Basically, the way I understand it is that if we could not come to a agreement on if the city would not come to an agreement on the cost, we basically would be like, we're gonna bill you X because that's what we feel.
Okay.
And they're gonna say, we're not paying it, then the agreement is terminated.
Okay.
And it's just done. We are the biller. And so this is the initial payment to set the rate, but they have certainty that if they do not exceed 800 acre feet a year, it's only 10 cents 100 cubic feet. But if it goes that, it basically says we get the right to go back and negotiate that. If we can't come to a negotiation and the city chooses to 30 cents, 40 cents, they're like, well, we're not paying that. Okay, well, agreement, now we're gonna terminate the agreement because that's what we're gonna charge you. So the base rate, item number 4 is the base rate and an adjustment of the base rate. So item number 4 defines what the actual base rate is, which is just adding the consumptive rate plus the capital contribution charge for 48 cents 100 cubic feet. And then we say the base rate is adjusted annually each January using the percent change in the CPI West fuels and utilities. And Welch looked at all the CPIU West. They looked at the CPIU West, they looked at CPIU West B and C, which is small and mid-sized cities, all that. They looked at what energy charges were doing, things like that, and it was found that the best way to ensure and insulate the city against the true cost of rising energy would be to actually call out within the West that particularly energy inflation. I think basically it was year over year, CPIU West is about 3.5%. CPIU West energy and fuel is about 4.5%. So there is a difference in energy costs, I think, as we all know, and we tried to get more granular. Welch tried to get more granular on that. But Welch also went back and looked at what our actual Avista rate charges are. We are billed in Millwood for our pumping off of Avista rate schedule 31, which is pump service for Washington State. And they have an not infinite, but they go back to 1994 with the rates and what has happened with that pumping schedule. It became apparent that most of the rate charges track very well with that CPIU West energy, but there have been times in the past that Avista has significantly changed the rates on those schedules. So item 5 is a new clause that says a special adjustment for energy charge, and basically what it comes down to is if the rate goes up more than 10% in a year, and that's the rate on that Schedule 31, we have the right to charge them the percent difference between 10% and whatever it is. So the example there is if the energy charge increases by 14%, we get to raise on top of the CPI-U increase, we get to raise it 4%, an additional 4% on top of that to cover the specific change in power. It has been stable the last few years, and by last few years that means about 10 to 15 years in there, but they have had times in Avista where Avista has either changed their way they actually allocate their kilowatt breakdowns and what their thresholds are. They also have made changes to their base rate. They have also made significant changes to their base rate. They have also made some significant changes to those rates at the behest of BPA for some things. So this is a new section that gives the city more insurance that should there be a specific change in energy charge that can be recognized and calculated for. The one thing in the adjustment of the base rate, we have made it very clear that there have been times in the past that inflation has gone negative, but we do not adjust below zero. We do not have a negative adjustment to our rate.
Can I ask a
Yeah,
clarifying
go
question?
ahead.
Well, I really like this special adjustment for the energy charge. Can I summarize it to ensure that I understand it correctly,
Sure.
not to challenge it? But that basically we're locked into this base rate, and is this base rate that looks like it's commencing based off of the schedule of January 1st, 2027? Is there an adjustment after that time?
It's every year.
So every year, well, okay,
Yeah.
perfect. That was my first question. And then the second question is, and then yes, of course, we can get down below, in which case we're held stable, and it can go up, but until it hits that 10%, that 10% threshold above what we thought it was gonna be, it will go ahead.
That's only for that schedule. That's only for the energy charge. We don't.
Okay,
So the CPI-U, the adjustment is an annual adjustment every year based on the CPI-U West Energy. We take
Correct.
that every year. The Avista charge, the one that's in section 5, is specifically related if Avista jacks up the price of energy and we see that in that rate schedule, it goes up over 10%.
within that year window, right?
Anytime. If
Okay.
they sit down and they do it over and over and over again for some reason,
Okay,
anytime
That's great.
yeah, no.
and we have the 4% margin on top of that, if
Yeah.
we do make if then the 10% threshold gets triggered, then we have a 4% margin on top of that?
Let's say it goes up, let's say they jerk the charges up and it goes up 20%. Then that's a 10% increase. It's basically when Welch revisited it, they kind of basically said you can't get too granular because actually sometimes power costs actually did go down a little bit. So basically it was one of these things where it's like the big red flag is it looked like if you got over 10%, you want to be able to capture whatever is over 10% as a special or an increase directly related to your electricity charge, your energy charge for that. If for some reason one day we take out all 4 of the lower Snake River dams and power goes like this and overnight there's a 30% increase in electric rates, we get to take a 20% increase right then, regardless of CPI-U, whatever happens with CPI-U or anything like that. This is just to insulate us that we are at the mercy of Avista for what we charge, what our consumptive charge is. Avista charges us whatever, we're at their mercy, we gotta pay the power bill. It's just simply to say, look, at some point, there might be a rate increase that is not an inflationary increase that we can't capture in that this is something that Avista's decided to do as a publicly held corporation that we might not be able to simply say, okay, we get that as part of the CPIU. This is there, so the city has that level of insurance that if our power supplier does something unforeseeable, we can capture that, and we get to, as part of this agreement, without going outside this agreement, we get to capture that and appropriately charge for power costs. Cause we turn around and we would end up passing that cost on to our residents. But we're still locking into that base rate, assuming that what we've seen in our rates are what we've seen in our consumption charges. We just keep kind of going along at that steady sort of increase based primarily on power. Cause as we talked about last time, of that 38 cents a 100 cubic foot for consumption charge, or 36 cents a 100 cubic feet for consumption charge, our stuff, not, because remember, the 38 cents also takes into operation. The 36 cents a 100 cubic feet, 26 cents of that is electric. And so with that being almost 2/3 of our costs, or more than that, we need to be able to move nimbly if power costs go up.
No, I really like that, I just wanted it to be articulated in detail.
Nope, that is as good as I can get it. So this is the agreement that we would like, or the city proposes to council to consider as the city's agreement to be presented to Irvin for their acceptance. And if they wish to come back with a negotiated charge, it would be off of this agreement. So this was the first, tonight, this is the first introduction of this. What I would ask is at the December 9th meeting, that council either provide comments, or this would be provided as an action item for consideration, not to sign the agreement,
To
but
approach them with this
but
version.
this would be the version that would be Millwood's version. Here you go. What do you got? Yes.
So at the last meeting, Councilmember Stravens mentioned some things he would like to see, and have we decided that that's just not feasible?
We got shout.
Yeah, I think it's in here.
Oh, it is. The shall, I got the shall.
The shall.
You also mentioned,
It's at 13,500.
pardon?
It was 13,500. It was that capital improvement, now it's 35,000.
And so you feel like that, cause you specifically called out lawyer and,
Yeah.
but I know, this is not me arguing your case, this is just me ticking and tying the things, cause you actually mentioned attorney fees and consulting fees. Do you feel like the 35 or the 1,300 going up to 35 as a capital is addressing that issue?
It seems more appropriate. Do we have figures for that, for engineering fees? You said it was basically half of engineering fees,
Yeah.
is that correct?
And some of the things we're doing and some of the things they're doing they are carrying their own engineering fees on things like that. They've carried the burden of the intertie completely, all the upgrades for the intertie completely, things like that. So they've not approached us on any fees for upgrading that intertie or anything like that. So I think all in all, the engineering fees that could be directly attributable to this are right now minor, given what we would have done. A lot of this is consulting, because some of it is any of the consulting fees, the engineering fees we have, a lot of this has been working through basically what we have for water rights, what we would do to act as a wholesaler, et cetera, et cetera. I don't see this as, I see this as if we were to actually have to replace Butler, this would cover half of it. Some of it also there's been a couple changes too in our original estimate of what it would cost to replace Butler, because we can't get as aggressive with Butler as staff or engineers wanted to, and I'll explain that in the mayor's comments.
So I have a question.
Sure.
So when we're talking about the commitment, water commitment,
Mm-hmm.
it's 300 acre feet. Then when we go to the rates, it's cubic feet. So in each acre foot, there's 443,560 cubic feet.
Mm-hmm.
So so the math, I'm having problems with the math. So it'd be 43,560 times 300,
Mm-hmm.
and then it would be 48 cents. So that's our potential.
Divide that by 100 because we charge on the 100 cubic foot, not on the cubic foot, but by the 100 cubic foot. So take your 300 times 43,560.
Okay.
Now divide that by 100.
Okay.
Now times that by 48.
Okay.
0.48.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Okay.
That make more sense?
That makes more sense.
There's a million different units we can use if you would like. I can move it all to gallons and we can go that way. Yeah, it's
Out of curiosity, what would the gallons look like for 800 cubic the acre or something?
so take the 300 acre feet.
But 300 acre feet is just what we're agreeing. I'm talking about the upper threshold that triggers a whole, like, now there's an increased burden to our system.
800, that would be 800. 800, if they were to want to consume more than 800 acre feet a year, that's when we would get to
And what's that in gallons, just out of curiosity?
a
Because I have no idea what acre, I can't not conceptualize acre feet.
So let's see. So 800. I'm a geologist, I know math. So you got 800 times 43560 times 7.48 is 8%. That's 260 million gallons.
Wow, 260 million gallons. That I can conceptualize. Thank you, Mayor.
And Kevin, an acre foot is just an acre a foot high.
Yes.
Water.
Yep. Yeah. See,
Okay.
it's that old farmer's thing. You put a foot of water on an acre ground and you can grow anything. Or you can watch it all sink into the ground and then put another foot of water on there.
Right. So I did my math. I think this is correct. So the total value would be roughly 62,726. Does that sound correct?
Yes, at just the 300 acre feet.
Right.
So as you go up from there,
It was 62,000 and what?
726. So 62,726.
Thank you, Kelly. Is it linear? So like, can we just double it and then add another half?
yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
Well, you could, but you're also year over year, you're also going up a percentage. So 600 acre feet would be 120-some thousand.
Yeah. And then 800 is when we go max.
Yeah, and 800 is the threshold that basically Welch-Comer believes that you have to sit down and revisit what's going on with the system and how much additional, if we look at it and we say, when we did that original math way back in the day, we looked at it and we said, okay, if we were to charge our capital fee based on consumption, it comes out to be about 30 cents cubic foot for what we would need to make for our capital improvement sort of thing.
So we're talking about 35,000 upfront for the capital and then all the other, basically to get into it, and then we would get up to 156,850, and then that would be potentially when we start experiencing diminishing returns. Potentially we'd have to assess for it because we'd hit 800, and so then it might actually start incurring costs on our side of the system.
Yes, that the load, if you think about water as a load, is like electricity, the load that would be delivered to Irvin would be at that point greater than the load being consumed by the city.
Okay.
And so you would want to potentially revisit looking at the infrastructure, because right now we're asking them to pay a third of what our normal capital improvement fee would be. You would want to look at potentially asking them to pay a higher level. Granted, 100%, if you're looking at this strictly from the consulting aspect, 100% asking them to pay the same level that citizens would pay is probably not appropriate, because a lot of our own system has to do with providing service to our own residents, fire flow, keeping up on because we have to have certain sizes of mains, replacing our cast iron in other areas that don't really have anything to do with Irvin. And that is why negotiation of a wholesale rate is more appropriate than simply having them pay something else, because you are having not necessarily a dedicated line, but they are one service, albeit a very large service. They are one service in that area. You could at times argue the same thing for Inland Empire Paper. You could say they should probably have something else, maybe, because they are not a standard commercial industrial service. They use a significant amount more water than any other commercial entity does in the city. And so their burden on our system is different than anybody else's. But I think that's an argument for somebody else.
So Kevin, I have a question. So our gross would be 62,726. What's our expenses? What's it cost?
So
in other words, what's our what would be the net gain of our
so
water system
if you were to say
fund?
roughly
Is there an expense ratio you're using?
I'm looking at the biggest one here. So our expenses would probably be about 34,000.
Okay. And that's basically energy.
Because initially at that load, our expenses beyond energy are probably next to nil. We are not operating anything at anything greater than what we would normally operate anything else. We are not. They are one service, so their administrative burden is low. They are pretty much just taking part of the water and we're dumping it into a pipe, and so we are paying that. And I would almost say that given the difference in load factor, and I've had this discussion with Welch, just kind of looking at the load factor. We're probably really not paying that much more in electricity because we already have to spin the pump to do what we're doing on a regular basis. So once that pump is up and spinning, you're not developing a significant more amount of water, you're just opening the valve up more to let more water through. Because we do not have VFDs on those motors, so we're not really dialing in our electricity. It's on or off, and that's one of the things that outside of this we need to actually we need to put VFDs on there so we can actually moderate our power consumption when we're not using full loads on the pumps. But that would have to happen anyway, regardless of Irvin, because there's a couple other things. However, you're probably going to ultimately realize more initially than saying simply that half or less. It's going to be less than that.
So roughly, it's safe to say 28 to 30,000 should go into the capital.
Yes, if not a little more.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Welch's historical look back on the Avista rate raises,
Yeah.
how many of those were between the Western CPI utilities and that 10%?
That one I can't answer. I can ask them when they are all back from their Thanksgiving vacation. But I can also I'm also happy to send out to everyone the rate study or the data that is provided for Schedule 31 and the historic CPIU, West Energy, et cetera, et cetera. Anything else?
So I want to summarize what Kelly was, because I think that was perfect answer, just summarizing for my understanding. You said based off of our biggest expense ratio, you took our highest one, and that was approximately a 1 to 2. And so he's saying if we did this, we would have to bank, which was our, what we talked about last time, we would bank that extra, and that would be approximately $30-something thousand a year towards our capital that would not exist today.
Right.
And you were saying even though I use the biggest ratio, if we're talking functionally, it probably isn't even that, because the electricity is kind of one of those things, like we're not fully using what we already have anyways and stuff. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah. And when we as we talked previously about the whole idea of maybe the council wishes in 26 to really kind of look at a different whole rate study or something like this. The idea being that we base our consumptive rate off of our budget. We look at how much we spent on all the things that are consumptive, and then we take that and we divide it and average it out to a month, and then turn it into acre feet, or take it and turn it into cubic feet and all that sort of stuff. We don't really sit down and go, okay, what's kilowatt? How many kilowatts are we using for these motors? This is how much we're gonna do. What's gallon of fuel cost and all this sort of stuff. We don't do that and then set the consumptive rate. That would be an active consumptive rate as opposed to a passive consumptive rate, or a reactive. It'd be a proactive consumptive rate as opposed to reactive. We've always worked off of a reactive consumptive rate because the intent is to keep rates as low as possible. So, my guess is that because we keep the rates as low as possible, and because what we're doing, other than increased power at different times when we are not normally running Butler, we aren't adding any that dime between the 26 and the 36, that dime beyond there, that dime probably isn't gonna change, that dime, they're not using that whole dime. They're not using that whole dime because we're not doing anything that we would normally do. So all those other rates, staff, we're not hiring anybody just for this program. We're not adding any vehicles just for this program. We're not having any special certifications just for that program. So we're not adding anything in there on an annual basis. There's no more fuel that needs to be used. There's no more of the consumptive because we're not adding a new pump, we're not adding a new booster, we're not doing anything like that. So we're not adding any other consumptive charges that are not normally part of our system, and we're operating our system as we would normally operate our system.
Oh, thank you for that. I think that potentially in 2026 we should do a rate, but I would caution us not to like make a bunch of chaotic changes because I echo what Dan was saying at the last meeting. We have done a great job. If now that we're going into a different future for water, we need to attack things differently. I think we always want to have those be data-driven choices, but I don't think we did anything that was inherently wrong, and so therefore let's completely reinvent the wheel or anything. I think we just need to go, yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I would say that is wrong or probably not sustainable in the long run is the
Not
fact
changing rates for 15 years?
is not we can operate the system. We can pay the people, we can keep the lights on, we can do all that. We're just not really banking enough money as a city to do the improvements in the long haul that we need to keep a functioning utility going, particularly if we're going to do our maintenance and not delay that maintenance for so long that then when we hit it, it becomes untenable to do it. That's the biggest issue is if we had a stout capital fund, then I think we could all pat ourselves on the back and go, wow, we've really done an excellent job of managing this. But we don't have a stout capital improvement fund. And we have lived a long time on the fact that while we were doing utilities, we had a fixed sewer rate and very low sewer charges, and we were able to fund profits because it's an enterprise fund. It's supposed to make a profit. We were able to fund profits relying primarily on the sewer side of the house, not on the water side of the house.
I agree. And I don't know that it requires a longer conversation.
No.
But I think that the thing that we're up against is a 5-year change, and we clearly need to pivot 100%. But I think pivoting all in like 6 months just because somebody's is chaotic, and then you don't even know what's soliciting what response we're seeing.
I agree.
The only thing I would look at is changing that flat per connection capital fee of $6 to a consumptive one on the consumer side, our customer side as well.
Yeah,
That is something we
we
should
can
look at
assess it and
before.
talk about it, right?
No, I'm not saying we change, but we should look at that before summer. You know, when consumption comes back up. Because we talked about the super users who are out there, you know, just they pay $6
I would
for
agree.
capital.
I'm all for us, but just know that these big change rates assessments are going to cost us a significant amount of money. I did follow up with Welsh Comer on that, and we do it. But I would remind us, and I understand everyone says, "Well, but there's not a leak. You need to let go of the 16 to 18%, Shauna." We could give everyone 2 months free peak hours if we figured out what the heck that variance is about, too. So I mean, I think we need to also tackle our aggressively pursue our capital. In both monitoring and improvements and stuff.
So, if there's no more questions on this, that actually, Sean's comment leads to a good one here on 2026 water and sewer rates. Council does you will have January to set the water and sewer rates for 2026. So that is something to keep in mind. That will be, we should be at the next meeting, we should be thinking about some type of direction on if you want to change anything, if you want to change the way things are assessed, or if you want to simply take some increases or something, or do something else, or do nothing at all. But council will have to address that in January of 26.
So we'll be talking about that in December 9th about how we're approaching that, cause it sounds like Councilmember Culler would like us to fundamentally relook at how we're.
No, just that fee, just that part of the capital cost fee, because we've talked about this throughout the urban, about changing our capital improvement fee to consumptive based instead of just flat, cause like you said, somebody in an apartment,
I agree.
who doesn't use any water.
Clearly, I agree, I'm just saying.
Yeah. I don't think that requires a full rate study, I think it's a structural change to that part of the fee.
Just have it modeled out.
Just talk about that and see if that's a change we wanna make.
So I agree, obviously I agree, but are you considering, I understand that you don't feel it's tied into this, but isn't it kinda tied into the 2026 water and sewer rates that we're
Yeah,
gonna
I mean,
agree
it
upon
could
in
be-
January?
Yeah, we can talk about it then.
I mean, or else we were just gonna do an amendment or else we're just pretending to codify something
Yeah.
in January. And so just can I ask, I agree it doesn't include the comprehensive thing, although I think that we should be thinking about how to do that when we can afford it. But how would you approach that? I mean, we have to at the very least model consumptive
Yeah.
versus current status quo.
And I think Welch Comer's already done some of that modeling as far as the average connection use over the $6, breaking that down into components of how much is actually used per user. And I think those numbers are available through Welch,
Okay.
or close some estimation.
So is there
of
something
that.
you wanna direct Mayor to have, and then me to have available in January? Cause what I'm gonna tell you we did last year was Mayor was up all night
No, I know.
with an Excel spreadsheet, trying to crunch numbers to present to you guys, and that's not gonna happen
If
this year.
Welch,
So let's proactively manage the situation.
if we have numbers of how that $6 per connection fee converts to a consumptive change.
So Welch has looked at that. We were able to cannibalize a lot of the data that was done for the rate study last year. They can look at that. I think the best thing, my recommendation to council would be, at the next meeting, be ready to discuss and then provide direction to Welch Comer as to, do you want to simply increase what you have? Are you fine with the rates structure that you have? You just want to take some increases, or you want to look at changing a few things, such as moving to a consumptive capital charge or some combination thereof, and ask them to do that so they can bring that back to council in January for consideration at that first meeting, that sort of thing. I don't think that they would be ready to just simply go, this is what we think the best thing is, because I think there still is that. Ashley was asking me also basically to ask you guys, December, can we have some direction on kind of what you're thinking? We realize it's not a fun topic to talk about, but needs to start getting addressed on that side. And then maybe in 26, that's where you look at some sort of more robust rate study to compare actual costs of production and operation versus simply being reactive from the budget side and going, okay, it was this much last year, now we're gonna raise it 5%, and that's what we're gonna budget for this year, and so that translates to these rates. That might be something to consider. I don't think it's, as Shauna said,
It's
maybe
not feasible.
it's not feasible by January 1. There's always that whole thing of immediate need versus long-term vision. So yeah, I think
We're looking at, but that's like a 6 to 8 month process,
Yes.
not by January. But I like your idea. I mean, as you know, I think we should not be penalizing the people that are the smallest users and making them burden that cost.
So I would just say for all the members there and Mr. Sander to just be thinking about looking at our current rate tables and rate structure and thinking about kind of what you would want to direct Welch to compute, calculate, send for all that sort of stuff. the other thing just to remember is that if council does decide to do a wholesale water agreement, you would probably want to have that done by January, if at all possible, because that rate would then also have to go into the new 2026 rate schedule as a wholesale rate in there as a sub rate, like our commercial and all that sort of stuff.
You're saying this rate needs to be done by January so that it
Yes.
can be fed into the contract that we would likely be.
No, this contract should be done by if you're gonna sell water and you can come to an agreement, if City of Millwood can come to an agreement on Irvin, that should be done by January, so that specific rate, let's say it's at 48 cents per 100 cubic feet, that specific rate goes into that rate schedule and gets codified in there. Because that rate schedule ripples out through all the other things that we do here with respect to late charges, all that sort of stuff. And the good thing about it is that the city does have that 1 month grace period, because we're always a month behind in charges, so we're not charging for January's consumption until February. January's usage on the sewer, consumption on the sewer until February, because you're a month behind on the readings. So you get January to work that through.
So your expectation is that the Irvin Water District interlocal agreement is executed upon by January 1st?
No, it should be executed during January if it's gonna get executed. That is my thought, because that rate's gotta get folded into the 2026 fee schedule. And I think it's might move along quicker than what people think. So, any other questions? Alright, so that concludes our action items presented for first reading or continued discussion. Now we're at public remarks. Do we have any public remarks? Please. Absolutely.
Sorry.
Thought it was
Tina Seifert, 10507 East Empire, and I was not sure if this would matter or not, but on Exhibit A for the wholesale water, it says the city agrees to permit the district to purchase up to a maximum of 1,000 acre feet. And then you go down to the 800, if it goes, I know that they're expecting only to draw 300, right? But then if the 800 is every 2 years, but then up above, the city agrees to go up to 1,000. Like I said, I don't know if that would make any difference, I was just looking at the sheet.
So, the 300 is their guaranteed minimum. They can, the first year out of the gate, if, let's say this agreement gets approved. First year out of the gate, they could draw up to 799 acre feet straight out of the system with no weird thing happening. If they went over the 800 that first year, you kind of place them on notice that says, okay, you're over 800, you're at 801. If you do that next year, then we get to talk about the capital improvement fee. They can, under this agreement, go up to 1,000 acre feet a year. If they get to 1,000, they have to provide notice to the city that they are at 1,000 acre feet, and then they get to that and they say we're at 1,000. If they get to 1,000 acre feet, let's say they get through the whole 800 acre feet, come up with a new rate, awesome. Then they have to say, we're at 1,000 feet, 1,000 acre feet, we think we wanna go to our maximum, 1,300 acre feet. Then the city gets to look at everything and say, yay or nay.
Depending on how the system could.
If we had to do something, yes, if we had to do something fantastical to the system to get to 1,300 acre feet, we could say no at that point. But that trip's at 1,000. That's where the trip. Their threshold under this agreement, their ultimate threshold is 1,300 acre feet. But we get the right to reevaluate actually supplying water at 1,000 feet, and we get the right to change the capital improvement fee or negotiate that at 800.
Gotcha. Okay, great, thank you
Well,
for clarification. And happy Thanksgiving.
I'm going to assume, since that was our only speaker, that we have no other public comments tonight, or public remarks tonight. So that brings us to council and mayor remarks. It sounded like you wanted to do.
Well, yours was about water anyway.
Okay, so very quickly, I had a meeting with Jamie Short last Monday, who is the head of Eastern Region head of water resources here, primarily to discuss the new metering consent agreement, the metering agreement for all the jurisdictions. First of all, we were able to have some frank conversations regarding different types of rights, things like that, and the I can't say assurance because it's never fair to say assurance from any agency because they are at the whim of whoever their boss is. But the general consensus, hard and fast consensus right now is that this metering agreement has nothing to do with inchoate right. That there is no desire to pursue any type of inchoate right, especially the idea of relinquishment. Now, that does not mean that should a purveyor who has municipal right that is inchoate go to ecology and ask for a change of that right. Adding a point of extraction to a right, trying to consolidate rights, trying to perfect and sell rights. That does not mean that ecology at that point would not look at the municipal provider's portfolio of right and determine if all that right is being put to beneficial use. And could potentially look at relinquishment of portions of unused right at that time. But that's only if you are pursuing a change in right. I was told that the idea of water wholesale, water wheeling, water wholesale, ecology has, their position is that is allowed, and that as long as it is approved through Department of Health, they do not, and that the wholesale does not cause a change or an exceedance of any municipal right or any other right, then it is perfectly valid under state law. You can sell whatever water you want to sell through pipes, as long as you've got the right to do it. The more interesting aspect is that it came out that this metering is being done primarily because they have no data. Department of Health does not share any data with ecology. And what the granularity of the data that they particularly need, they do not have. And as the keeper of water resources within the state, the agency charged with that, particularly in light of some of the issues that have happened within the Spokane River over last year, i.e. the dewatering in the summer at the losing stretch there. There has been discussion that there may need to be additional investigation and or modeling of seepage from the river, and what that looks like and why that potentially is happening, etc. They have realized that they cannot perform that seepage analysis because they have no good data on what actual consumption out of the aquifer from all the various purveyors within Spokane County, within the basin, looks like. So they are aware that they have a significant data gap that they probably should not have, and that they need to start, one, taking this data and accumulating this data so that they can provide better modeling and better investigation for use of water resources within the river and the conjunctive use of the groundwater surface water. They've also realized that as the agency charged with safeguarding and enforcing the water rights, the actual right, they don't have good data on that either. And so some of this is to determine if purveyors are exceeding any portion of their right, both on the consumptive quantity, the QA, and the instantaneous pumping rate, the QI. And they are looking at getting this information on a monthly basis. And if purveyors are found to be exceeding their right, Ecology will offer technical support to assist them in meeting that right, but curtailment, a directive of curtailment in usage, always remains a possibility if you are exceeding your right. We don't exceed our right in any way, shape, or form. However, Ecology is looking at a granularity of things now under this because they are evaluating not just you as a purveyor, but each one of your individual rights. And so at the Butler well, we don't exceed our quantity withdrawn, our QA, we don't exceed our nameplate 800 acre feet a year, but there are times that we actually do exceed the QI. We pull water out at a greater rate than what we are supposedly allowed to do. Our QI on that Butler well is 500 gallons per minute. That well easily can exceed that, and sometimes we do. That would also be an issue because we are restricted on our nameplates. So in Millwood, we have to basically ensure that we are not exceeding our QI or our QA or our QI on any of our rights. And so one of the things on the Butler well is we need a variable frequency drive. We also need a variable frequency drive on Old Park because we need to be able to operate Old Park conjunctively with Butler in order to assure that when we are running Butler as our lead winter pump, we are not exceeding our 500 GPM on that discharge from that well, and it would make it a lot easier for our system as a whole if we have VFD on Old Park in order to shuttle some of that water around without having to slam both those motors on and just go full out and choke them down with the clay valve, which is not good in the long run for those things at all. So we do have some things, even if we do not have any type of input or any type of sale from Irvin, you can pretty much figure that in 26 we're going to have to be on the hook. The city's going to have to be on the hook for a VFD at Old Park and a VFD at Butler, because our motors are just too big just to be, a little bit here, a little bit there. So we've got to get those VFDs on there, because it's going to be really important that as purveyors, you are not exceeding your nameplates on your rights. They are going to be looking at that. Yes?
If we go to consolidate, we've got plenty of QI overall, but if we go and ask to change that, then they're gonna look at the whole damn thing.
They will look at the whole damn thing, and she made that exceptionally clear.
Well, that makes sense. If I was sitting in the college's chair, I'd probably say the same thing. I don't want to say that. No, but
well, I would say, with the work that I have other places, it was a very interesting and wide-ranging discussion about water resources in the state, and this is not something that is, you can't look at this and go, this is a Spokane Valley, Raft and Prairie problem or a Spokane Wyra problem or something. I can say that just as kind of an aside, down in Franklin County, for years, the Columbia Basin Project, so Bureau of Reclamation, has been allowing lots of water to leak out of their canals and has artificially raised the water table within the Columbia Basin.
Nitrate level.
Well, the biggest issue is that water that is, you've got your historic water table, and then this water here, this is Bureau Rec water. All this in here is Bureau Rec water. And so all these people that are drawing out of Bureau Rec water, more likely than not are gonna have to pay the Bureau Rec for their water. Yes?
Is part of this attached to this whole seepage thing and them having hyper awareness of their not sufficient data around the August 25th water situation? Because I went to the Idaho-Washington Aquifer Consortium classes, and they were like saying that this really literally recalibrates the entire model for our aquifer, but that we don't have the data to determine like where is it coming from? Is it coming from the purveyors, or is it coming from we truly had a? So? Am I going down the correct road?
Yeah, that's why you're taking all this pumping data. This is why all this pumping data is there, because they do not have any actual pumping data. The model that is being used now, which is the Vaccaro model. The Vaccaro model was calibrated with its inputs based on what they had on paper and what was anticipated based on population, things like that. If you think about it, that Vaccaro model probably came out in, if I remember right, 2007. Isn't that the day it was? Oh, I'm looking at him.
Oh, I was like, I took one class, Kevin.
So 2007. So if you think about the land use patterns in Spokane County and Columbia County, you have no irrigation anymore. You've removed most of your agriculture, so you're not putting large volumes of water that's going to infiltrate there. You've changed most of your infiltration patterns because you had increased development, so water's getting captured in stormwater, things like that. You have all sorts of differing irrigation patterns with respect to just residential use, commercial use. You've got a hell of a lot more road, which we know, it rains, it heats up, vaporizes off, that don't get in the ground. And then you've had 10 years of diminished rainfall. So any banked capacity you would have had in your upper unsaturated zone that would have served as base flow over time is probably toast by now. And so I think, yes, they definitely need to get back in and look at that model. Starting with the pumping is great and is going to go a long way, but there's a lot more. They're going to have to go back and do a completely brand new land use cover patterns. They're going to have to do new precipitation analysis, because that was another horrendous one, is how much gets into the aquifer from precipitation? Well, that much. And you look at what.
But that strengthens what you heard from the Department of Ecology. This metering has nothing to do with our water rights, has nothing to do with like putting urgency on us to correct things, because if we don't use it, we'll lose it. That is still a 5 to 7 year challenge that we're up against as far as the adjudication process.
Yeah, they're not gonna come after inchoate right for municipalities. What will happen though is you will have more purveyors looking for water purchase, because if you are a purveyor, you could easily say, I have this portfolio of water and I don't go over it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm going to go about my day. Now what ecology is going to do is they are going to look at each individual right. So oftentimes each individual well or 2 or 3 wells that you have on one right, and they're going to look at what you're doing with your wells specifically. And like we just talked about here, we run Butler, We run it over the QI, we don't go over the QA, but we run it over the QI because that allows us to run that well optimally and not have to fire up another well when we do that. There are lots of purveyors out there that have some good wells and then some not so good wells. And the good wells, they just make water, and the other wells they leave for later on. Well, if you're exceeding a QA out of one of those, or you're exceeding a QI or exceeding both because you've got one good well and two marginal wells, but on paper you've got all this right, you're not going to be able to do that anymore because they're going to look at you and go, on this well, you are exceeding your right. So you've got to figure out how you're going to make your system work with your other wells that were marginal or something like that. So there's going to be purveyors that are going to have change.
Now, some of them have consolidated. That was a big effort also, 15, 20 years ago, to take all your water rights and make them interactive, put them all in one big bucket. A lot of people didn't do that. And other systems are like Millwood. We had an old one that we abandoned, walked away from. But others have old wells they don't use because of water quality issues that are just sitting there as an emergency backup. But that's where that old right sits there, and they didn't take the opportunity to consolidate. Mainly because I think so many of the systems were less than 1,000 connections 20 years ago. And they didn't have to update their water system plans quite so often, and so a lot of that just kind of went on as life goes on. Millwood's a little unique that we do keep our water system plan up to date.
Well, I like to think that as a municipality, we have a higher threshold of responsibility as opposed to.
I think so too, but the irrigation districts and the water districts, especially the irrigation districts, they still operate under, when they're growing cantaloupes and apples out across Vista instead of houses.
So I guess that's the other thing too, is at what level of granularity are you gonna pull that right and go, well, this is an irrigation right. You're only supposed to be using this April through September.
Well, Trentwood had that issue a number of years ago, and I don't know if it's been resolved or not.
Might have to get resolved now.
But I every time I drive down the New Sullivan, I see all those houses, and I remember driving a combine where those houses used to be, or the fields used to be. Now they're houses. And of course, it only gets worse as the farther up in the valley you go.
Yeah.
You used to harvest in houses.
I think it will be interesting to see if they really just keep their nose to QI and QA, or if they really start peeking into like specifically these irrigation districts and go, your rights for irrigation.
April to October.
What do you do in November to March? Because you're not using this one.
And are you talking about the adjudication process? Because
No.
I really think these people are actually just data collecting. You don't believe that? Isn't that what you just got done telling us?
No,
data.
they're going to take that data and they're going to use that data. And they're going to use it to, one, robust the model, but they're also going to use it because they have a duty to enforce. And to what level they decide they're going to enforce certain things, I don't think they're gonna do a lot, because you can't with commerce wanting everybody houses everywhere. But at the same time, if you've got purveyors that are just
Egregious.
yes, and there can be a few in the valley that are.
Well, it'd be interesting if it's consolidated, because those are Bureau of Reclamation wells.
I asked about that and she didn't want to. How you gonna make consolidated behave? They're Bureau Rec. They don't have to.
I'll ask you off record, but I'm curious what you and Dan think is the cause of the August 25 thing.
I personally think it's where you are right now after years of drought, changing land use patterns, increased impervious surface, hotter summers, all that sort of stuff, and you are putting less water out that gets into, that just is lost to the aquifer. And sooner or later, that makes up for, when you take away that artificial recharge, that takes away that ability to eliminate many sins. And they're finding it out in the Yakima Valley with precision irrigation, that these guys have gone away from real irrigation and wheel line and things like that, and now they're all into these center pivots and things like that. You're not putting as much water on there, and that water table is starting to go down. That's like, oh look, beforehand when everybody was out there just dumping vast quantities of water, the water table was within 2 or 3 feet of the ground. Now it isn't. Well, because you're just putting just enough water on there for the plants. That has an effect. That's what happened in Treasure Valley in Idaho. When they started turning off the junior groundwater users because the senior river guys needed the water, when they turned off the junior groundwater users, suddenly there was no water anywhere, because what was happening was the junior groundwater users were throwing water everywhere, artificially putting all that water into Thousand Springs and everything like that, recharging the river. So it's like, well, we gotta shut the junior guys off. Hey, where'd all the water go? It's just one big interlinked system, and us being able to move water like it's going out of style has only made it worse.
Well, just think about all the water that goes down the sewer pipes these days that used to go in the drain fields.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we don't abandon wells for high nitrates and chlorides anymore, but we were getting pretty close on East Spokane, and I wouldn't be a bit surprised that's where the Holman well came from with West Valley High School. The old West Valley, it was over the Safeway High School,
Yes.
Right downstream, and high nitrates.
Well, you can get rid of all the septic tanks, all that sort of stuff. It changes over time. No, it's a reactive. It is a reactive system, and you start pulling on the threads, and it gets weird. And it takes so long to see changes. I mean, you turn something off up here, and it's years before it happens down there. Okay, council comments. Mr. Stravens.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Mr. Sander.
Well, I apologize for being what I thought was 4 minutes late, but apparently it's longer than that. Because I looked at 5, I said, oh no, 5 is December meeting is 5 o'clock. This has got to be back to 6. Yeah, I know it's not 7, doggone.
No, you're okay.
But
We
I'm sorry.
appreciate you coming by. Thank you. Mr. Keller.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Ms. Beatty.
Happy Thanksgiving as well, and this I think is kind of co-presented with Councilmember Kohler. We sent out an email to everybody. This has been in response to the audit that took place in May. A lot of people are asking for us to close the loop. Just matter of fact about all the different things that we've done. And so basically we've generated a report to you that we would like to present at the with the December 9th package as a co-sponsored statement from all the whole council. So if you guys can get back to us, that would be great. And it's just things like, we closed out this item, we're recruiting for a treasurer, we've interviewed so just letting everybody kind of know work's been being done these last 8 months.
So the comments up, Brian.
Yes, please send them to, as you know, all correspondence go through
Yeah, I was about to say, doesn't that
yeah, just directly call me. We'll chit chat about it. No, Savannah, as it was disseminated to you through the lawyer, we will also bring it back through the lawyer.
Okay.
Yeah, the plan was to do it with more public presence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
That sounds good.
pretty just itemized what we're doing.
Yeah,
We wanted to include it into a packet, but before we put the entire council's name on it, we wanted to make sure you all saw it.
Yep, sounds good. I saw it.
Wonderful.
Mr. Van Hayes, you still with us?
Thanks everybody for holding work. And hopefully be back to.
Well, we look forward to seeing your your smiling face at the next meeting. Hopefully it hasn't gotten too cold down there.
No, it's like 41.
Yeah, ain't bad.
It'll do.
Yeah, I'll find out tomorrow. All right. Well, with no further remarks, the next meeting is set for. Next meeting we have a special joint meeting between the Millwood Planning Commission and the Millwood City Council starting at 5 p.m. And then the regular City Council meeting will convene at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, December the 9th. So until such time, we will see everybody there. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment?
Second. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned.
So Kevin, I
Yes.
think the Bureau of